I'm not going into sequence yet. I'm just trying to snug them on down there, you know, before I do the torquing. And I'll show you guys the proper torque sequence for these bolts. Whatever you do, don't use an impact wrench because you'll be sorry. I know most of you guys wouldn't. Okay, so there, clamp down. Now, let me take you through the sequence. So, the first torque sequence is 11 pounds or 132 inch-pounds torque. So we're going to start right here with the first bolt in the sequence. Okay. Here's number 1. Here's number 2. And number 3 is just right above it. And I'll also post a diagram of the order so that it's really easier to follow in the video in case you can't see it very good. Here's number 4. Here's number 5. And number 6 is on the complete opposite side. Number 7 is right here in front of it. And then number 8 is over here. And now let's go on up to 288 inch-pounds or 24 foot-pounds of torque. Now let's go back over here to number 1 again. And let's tighten it. And number 2. Number 3. Number 4. Number 5. Seven, and 8. Now a little click, Allie, means that I got it tight enough. And we'll just go over it one more time just to make sure. Six, 7, and 8. So there we go. Now the lower intake manifold is back down, and it should be flush with the where the head or the valve cover gasket meets with the head. If it's not perfectly flat with each other, you've done something wrong. Okay, I've gone ahead and reconnected the lower radiator hose. You want to do that before reinstalling the power steering pump and alternator bracket here, else I'll just make it twice as hard for you. I've replaced this hose here that goes from the water pump to the heater core, and there's the part numbers, as you can see. And I got this for like $1.57 from Rock Auto on a clearance, so you know, if you don't have to have it right then, they've got great prices on junk like that. I'm also going to go ahead and replace the lower radiator hose, and there's the part number for this sucker too. So as you can see here with this, it's really swollen because of the oil contamination and the oil that's gotten on it. So I've also went ahead and changed the plugs and wires in the back. I think I already told you that or showed you that. Also, when you go to hook up your connections, you're going to clean that crap off of there, like how I've gotten the barbs on these all cleaned up and stuff. Because if not, then you're just going to be playing with the water leak. So what I'm going to do to flush this thing out, guys, is I can't believe I really didn't think of this sooner. I was going to get the Ford iron cleaner stuff, but you know, that stuff's pretty expensive, and apple cider vinegar isn't in comparison. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get 2 gallons of that and run it through here for a little bit and use that to flush out the system. During the repair of this car, I'm dealing with past another kidney stone, so I'm not going to deal with the replacement of the radiator at this point. I'm just going to go ahead and flush all that out the best I can for now, and deal with it another time when not hurting so bad or uncomfortable. Anyway, so I'm trying to figure out what we're going to be doing next here. I guess really what I'd like to do is go ahead and get the valves covered back up. So what I'm going to do is do the valve covers next, and I need to go read, because I think that we got to put some Permatex right here between this gap, and make sure that that's perfectly flat between the lower intake manifold and the heads, because if not, you're going to wind up with leaks. Alright, so I'm going to put the push rods back into the engine. Same orientation and everything that they were previously in. You know, you want to make for certain that you've got contact with the actual roller, which I'm going to verify that with a flashlight before I tighten them down, because I'm not just going to assume anything, because that's a good way for a disaster to happen. So anytime you're working on this stuff, always double check or triple check your work, especially before starting the thing up, because you wind up finding out you may have made a big mistake of. Unlike a lot of other engines, these don't just line up perfectly straight. They're pretty much cockeyed just a little. So you have to make sure to keep them centered as you tighten them up and everything. Okay, here I've got the valve cover gaskets installed, and you can't put them on wrong. Make sure it looks like this. You'll have to go all the way around it, pressing it down into the places that it's supposed to be. Make sure it's clean and free of debris and all that junk. And I've taken some of these valve cover grommet sets. You need 2 of them. And you want to take the old rubber off and put the new rubber on, just like this right here. Make sure your bolts are clean too while you're at it. And there's the old ones. Okay, so there's 2 steps to tightening these rocker arms back down. I've went ahead and double checked and made sure that my push rods were on my rollers. That's a very, very important thing to do, because you know what, the one right here wasn't on it. So step 1, you're going to want to tighten it up to 5 to 11 foot-pounds of torque, or that's also 60 to 132 inch-pounds of torque. So go ahead and set this thing around 100 inch-pounds. Actually, this one just goes down to 120, so that's what we're going to do, is just 120 foot-pounds of torque. I mean, inch-pounds, my bad. Okay, that's 120 foot-pounds of torque. Now let's go up to around 320 or so. Alright, somewhere in the neighborhood. Go. So now we've got those installed. Now let's go ahead and install the push rods on the back side of the block. Now this is where it's going to be hard to make sure that your push rods are back in where they're supposed to be. So you're going to really want to make sure that they lined up where they're supposed to be. And again, the same orientation that they were removed in. Well, just drop them in there because I mean they will go down in there. Set it now, turn around and drop that down there, something crazy like that. There we go. I bet without torquing those down, I bet we could just fire it up and it'd be just fine, right? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a light and have a look-see at that and make sure that they're all on the rollers like they're supposed to be, and then we'll torque these boys down too. Okay, here's my fuel rail, and there is the clean injectors that I've been putting in them. And here's what one looks like. All nice and cleaned up. I think you can see that clearly, I don't know. But anyway, these may be a tough pain to get out of the fuel rail, but there's no clips or anything that holds them in. You just push them back in or pull them out while wiggling to get them out of the fuel rail. And from what I read, it says not to use grease on these seals. It'll actually clog up the system. So, but and here's where you all, if you've been watching this, where I've repaired this with JB Weld. So hopefully it'll perform and function like it ought to. I don't see why it wouldn't. So let's go ahead and put the fuel injectors back into the intake manifold. Here I go to torque these to 120 inch-pounds of torque. Now let's raise it up to somewhere around 300 inch-pounds. 300 to 320. There we go. We got the push rods reinstalled and the rocker arms torqued back down. I checked the backside twice, but I'm gonna just take my time and recheck the front ones again. Make sure that I can for sure see them in the rollers. So I'd hate to mess that part up. It's definitely starting to get a little dark on us here, but I think I'll stop after I get the fuel rail back in. So, for me, I've got 8mm bolts still stuck in the intake so that it was easy for me to find them. So, I'm going to have to remove those. And really, if you're smart, you'd plug all these holes instead of doing what I'm doing and just leaving it open for whatever to fall down in there. So, if I drop something down in there later and have to take this back apart to fish it out, I doubt I'll learn my lesson. Because I was changing valve cover gaskets on a rodeo and dropped a screwdriver bit down the spark plug hole. And if that wouldn't teach me to plug up these much larger holes, then I don't know what else would. But at least I'm honest with you guys, right? So anyway, your your fuel rail may be different than mine. Depending on the year of your Taurus, some of them are metal, and those are much better than these plastic chokes here, but you just push the fuel injector down into the intake manifold. One injector at a time. Try real hard not to pinch your O-rings. there's no any kind of retainers or anything to hold the fuel injectors in. What holds your fuel injectors in are the bolts that hold the plastic fuel rail in. I guess really I wished I would have went ahead and finished up the water line that goes to the heater core from the water pump before putting these injectors in. But, well, I already got it started, so. Might as well finish. Injectors installed on the back side. So you don't have to like power tighten it or nothing, but definitely tighten down. 8mm. Places here on the between the intake and the head. You need to put you some black Permatex on it. Just a little dab like that in that spot. And you come over here, we'll do the same thing right here. For the front one, that you have the valve cover with the oil cap on it, and then it's on the right hand side, you know, that so that 3.0 V6 can be read properly. So nobody wants to read that wrong. have to go back and look at pictures because I forgot where these bolts actually go, but I'll go back and swap them around later. These don't require nearly as much force because, well, oh man, that's awful. Because if you look at these bolts here, you see that it's going to bottom out, so you're not really going to apply much torque at all to that. In fact, you're going to do 80 to 106 foot-pounds. I mean, 80 to 106 inch-pounds of torque. If you over tighten these, you'll break the bolts off, and I understand that that's something you don't want to do. This torque wrench isn't even going down to the little bit of torque that I need, so I'm just going to have to forego the thing. Because once you can tell that they're bottomed out, it's on there, so there's no need to manhandle the crap out of it because you feel like it needs to be torqued down or something, which no valve cover bolts really need a lot of excessive force anyway. we go, so I didn't break any of those off. Man, it's scary. I read about some other people doing that, and well, I'm one of those people that bolt's easy to break. I definitely will break it. So here we go, it's daylight finally. Now I can have a better look at the repair. And you know what I think I goofed on here is I think I mounted this backwards. Uh-oh. Because there's no undoing that. So I think everything's going to be okay. But if not, I'm going to kick myself in the head afterwards. I'm worried about is the connector for the fuel pressure sensor there being in the way of the valve cover, but I don't know. I should check that out real quick. So it turns out it's gonna be okay. It will fit. I was about to just like have a little meltdown there for a minute. Just had to breathe real deep. But yeah, that's gonna go on there and fit like it ought to. So, but just barely. So, that's one thing to take note of is the orientation of this thing. You don't really want to flip it the wrong way like I did, but anyway, it's already done and glued on there. I'm stuck with it like that. Okay, so take some more TV. Put your dab there. Well, it's on the other side. And take your valve cover. Make sure not to let the gasket get fouled up on the engine wiring harness. be honest with you, I don't know if I got all these bolts in the right places. Pretty much don't care. Just want to get my car together. When we get to that point, be careful. And really, if you can't get these bolts in hand tight like what I'm doing, you need to clean out the bolt holes or the bolts themselves. You're going to have problems if you don't. And now we got the valve covers back on this machine. So let's go ahead and get the wiring harness somewhat out of the way. Make sure while you're working around their plastic fuel line, you do everything in your power not to make it hate you. If it breaks, you'll be sorry. I have to watch how I redo this to get everything hooked back up. Clip broke off of this one, so that's awesome for me. And this other clip broke off just as soon as I plugged it back in, so that's awesome. You have to excuse me, I'm gonna have to wrangle these wires. Barely did manage to get that plugged in there. I mean, you can see just how tight of a crazy fit that is. At least I think you can. Right there's the plug. I had to cut a bunch of it apart. So here's a big piece of it. And I had to take the valve cover bolt there back off. I don't know how much of that you can see or not, but it's hard to get the camera in there to try to get a view of it, but Just take my word for it. That's tight as I don't know what. We'll reconnect our hose from our whatever. And I'm going to wait to reconnect the fuel supply line here to the fuel rail once I'm done connecting all the water lines and everything else. So that'll be the last thing that I do. But one other thing, be super careful about your connectors for your injectors, because all the plastic connectors on the back side of mine have broke off, so I'm just going to go get me some zip ties and use those to hold those down on the injectors. So, you know, you don't have to run out and get new plugs if you don't want to. I mean, that's a lot more work, and I'm definitely not going to. So here's what I've done. I've taken a zip tie and secured the fuel injector connector to the fuel injector, and that coming off of there. I did use some small ones starting out, and then I was like, oh yeah, I got some larger ones there. So I took my brass wheel there and cleaned up the barb there for the water connector. Now I just got to go find what I did with my hose clamps for that and reconnect that. And I also pulled the drain on the radiator and drain it the rest of the way. And I went ahead and reconnected the thermostat housing, but there's no thermostat in it because I'm going to flush the engine, so I don't want that in there. And my wiring harness isn't really going to be able to sit in there like it used to and it's supposed to, so it's just in there just however I could get it to go. And like I said, that connector right there for that fuel pressure sensor is in such a horrible position now, but at least it is in there. So next thing I want to do is get the firing order and reconnect the spark plugs and get the little wire managers on the standoffs and stuff so that these don't get damaged or whatever. And then I'll get on with putting the upper intake manifold on this thing and really start to get it together. It's taken me like, I don't know, like 2 or 3 weeks, but I haven't felt good and all that. It's going to be nice to have my car back. Okay, so now we're going to work on putting the power steering bracket back in. So now we'll need to put these studs in there. The coarser threads go on. This ought to be a lot easier than when we were removing them. Now there's really 3 bolts that'll hold this thing up, the third being the bolt that the tensioner pulleys on. try and manage this thing and these studs both. Trouble with that. I can't get it in as far as I'd like to, so I'm going to take my vice grips and dump it on out. I mean, technically to I mean, the only reason I can't turn the studs is just because it keeps getting in a bind with the bracket it's holding up. They're actually not hard at all to turn, and if they are, then the best thing to do is get you a chaser and chase out the threads on that head so that you don't have such a tough time. And also, you know, make sure your bolts are clean too. Now we got the power steering pump and alternator bracket put back on there. Okay, so on here the firing order or piston numbers or cylinder numbers, whatever, are fairly easy to find. You'll find them right in front of where the injector goes down into the lower intake manifold. So here's cylinder 1, cylinder 2, cylinder 3, cylinder 4, cylinder 5, and cylinder 6. Thank you, just set it down, baby. So let's hook these spark plugs up. So anyway, I appreciate all of you that watch my channel, my videos, and those of you that chat back and forth with me. Thank you. I want to take a moment and praise my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for all the mercy and grace that He's shown me and my family. And if you don't know him, I pray that you do meet him. You can read about him in the King James Bible, and you can check out on my website at sharingthetruthandlove.com and click on the Salvation tab. Have the gospel outlined as to who Jesus Christ is and what he did to save you and how you can be saved by grace through faith alone and no works of yourselves. So anyway, my friends and viewers, thank you again, and praise our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Have a great rest of your weekend.